Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to United Unitarian Universalist Congregation on this lingering winter day. My name is Reverend David Kraemer, minister here at this church. Helping with today's service is Alex Chilsen, recently returned from a land down under, and Aaron Hurwitz, our tech. If you are joining us online, welcome as well. This service is both live and live streamed. A couple of things to lift up before we begin. As we are returning to in-person worship, we can use some help with some parts of church life, particularly on Sunday morning as we ready the building. It means turning on the ventilators and making sure the doors are open and that sort of thing. A while back, I sent out a message looking for greeters, groundskeepers, and grave diggers. You don't have to dig graves, but helping with the building would be appreciated. So if you are willing to help in that way, please let me know. Also, our caring team has been caring for all of us through these long 2 years, and they do a lovely job. And this also is a very meaningful and important work for us in this congregation. If you are perhaps inclined to maybe see what the caring team does and how you might help, please let me know. Tuesday is election day. This is an important one. Please make sure you plan to vote if you have not done so already. And United's annual auction, our fundraiser, will be held in June this year, June 12th, is that right? And right now we are receiving your donations of things to auction off. This has been the life of this church for many, many years. And so if you have something that you'd like to offer up, an event, a trip, a dinner, an old grandfather clock, I don't know. There is a way to do this year online. There also are forms available out on the ledge. Our theme this month is awakening, becoming aware. Our worship team talked about it as they met this month, and they talked about this in the sense of growing, learning, especially about and from others. A good example of this is that we are now at the beginning of Ramadan, the 9th month of the Islamic lunar calendar, observed by practicing Muslims as a month of fasting, reflection, and prayer. It commemorates the first revelation of Muhammad and is considered one of the 5 pillars of Islam. It is the discipline of Ramadan, the prayers, the fasting, that we might specially awaken to now. It is the discipline that invites us into generosity and growth, a sense of family and a sense of self. Our Soul Matters packet takes awakening in yet another direction, thinking as much about reawakening, remembering our best selves, reconnecting with the magic of the world that we might have known as children, recalling the experience of the holy, often triggered by the slightest thing. From Anais Nin. You live like this, sheltered in a delicate world, and you believe you are living. Then you read a book, Lady Chatterley, for instance, or you take a trip, or you talk with someone, and you discover that you are not living, that you are hibernating. The symptoms of hibernating are easily detectable. First, restlessness. The second symptom, when hibernating becomes dangerous and might degenerate into death, absence of pleasure. That is all. It appears like an innocuous illness. Monotony, boredom, death. Millions live like this or die like this without knowing it. They work in offices, they drive a car, they picnic with their families, they raise children, and then some shock treatment takes place. A person, a book, a song, and it awakens them and saves them from death. Please join me as we light our chalice, as we do each Sunday. May this flame kindle within us the warmth of community, the fire of commitment, and the light of truth. Here together we scatter and nurture seeds of spirit, service, and community. I've been saying that for years and I still get it wrong. Let's sing together. Alex is going to lead us in Come, Come, Whoever You Are. Please sing softly through your masks if you are so inclined. We did sing this a couple of weeks ago, but I think especially as we reconvene, this is a good one for us. We'll sing this through 3 times.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come.
So I have a story. This one is an old one, an old favorite of mine, as we have recently been relishing reading books that have been challenged or banned or removed from school districts. This one, too, has a bit of a history to it. It's old enough now that it's pretty mainstream. But I was away for the week. I was at a workshop in Tennessee. Tennessee in the springtime was lovely. And so I had to kind of return to some old standards. This is In the Night Kitchen by Maurice Sendak. Did you ever hear of Mickey, how he heard a racket in the night and shouted, "Quiet down there," and fell through the dark, out of his clothes, past the moon and his mama and papa sleeping tight, into the light of the night kitchen, where the bakers who bake till the dawn so we can have cake in the morn mixed Mickey in batter, chanting, "Milk in the batter, milk in the batter, stir it, scrape it, make it, bake it." And they put that batter up to bake a delicious Mickey cake. But right in the middle of the steaming and the making and the smelling and the baking, Mickey poked through and said, "I'm not the milk, and the milk's not me. I'm Mickey." So he skipped from the oven and into bread dough, all ready to rise in the night kitchen. He kneaded and punched it and pounded and pulled till it looked okay. Then Mickey in dough was just on his way, when the bakers ran up with a measuring cup, howling, "Milk, milk, milk for the morning cake." What's all the fuss? I'm Mickey the pilot. I get milk the Mickey way. And he grabbed the cup as he flew up, and up, and up, and over the top of the Milky Way in the night kitchen. Mickey the milkman dived down to the bottom, singing, "I'm in the milk, and the milk's in me. God bless milk, and God bless me. Then he swam to the top, pouring milk from his cup into the batter below. So the bakers, they mixed it and beat it and baked it. Milk in the batter, milk in the batter. We bake cake and nothing's the matter. Now Mickey in the night kitchen cried, cock-a-doodle-doo, and slid down the slide, straight into bed, cake-free and dried. And that's why, thanks to Mickey, we have cake every morning. That's my story. I think the theological statement in that book is, I'm in the milk and the milk's in me. Please join me in a few moments of meditation, prayer. In this changing season, we give thanks for sunshine and meltwater, sometimes a little snow. The flakes were lovely. We give thanks for the opening up of the earth and the opening up of our society. Grateful for these first cautious steps into the mud. Grateful to be back together again. Let us be mindful of our wider society and the tension that still lingers. Mindful of our world and its own melting. Grateful for birdsong and music, the gift of human community and this good earth. May we learn to live in peace. Blessed be. It is time now to share in our generosity. Paul, if you would please, Alex has an offertory for us. We will pass the plate. It is part of what it takes to sustain this church, this community, this sense of belonging. Please give generously. We share, of course, more than our monetary gifts. We share our lives in this congregation, each week sharing joys and sorrows, milestones in our individual lives. If you have something to share, I would invite you at this time to come forward, take a stone from the bowl, tell us your name and what's on your mind, and when you are finished, place the stone in the bowl with the water and let the ripples carry your concerns out to the wider community. Grandparents for the third time. Woo-hoo.
I'm Patty. I have 2 different friends in 2 different hospitals with serious concerns right now. And I hope that the update will be that they both became a little stronger.
Hi, I'm Donna Lundeen, and I have 2 people in hospice care. Neither will probably survive, but I pray for their families and the healthcare providers.
Well, this is a bit of good news. The bluebirds came back today. The males come and get in the boxers, and then about a week later the females follow, and we have bluebirds all over the pasture. That's a good thing.
My name's Isaiah, and my mother, arthritis is getting a little bit worse this year.
Up this one stone for all those in Ukraine and others who are fighting oppression and suffering around the globe, and another stone for all those joys and sorrows that remain unspoken, but on our hearts and minds. Let's keep these in mind. Let's sing with Alex as he leads us in Walking With You.
Walking with you, walking with you is our prayer. So, part of this is perfectly coming out of joys and sorrows because I have many joys to share. Wanted to just take a minute to share about my trip and reflect on it a little bit. As you may or may not know, I think I discussed this a little bit. It had been 3 years since we had been able to see Taryn's side of the family in person, and 4 years since we had been able to travel back to Australia. Just at first due to immigration for Taryn and not wanting to travel while that's all in flux, and then because of the pandemic. So the last time that we saw Taryn's parents in person prior to a month ago was when they were here in 2019 for our wedding. And we were supposed to go April 2020, had our flights all booked, and we were finally able to cash in on those tickets a month ago and go and spend time. A lot of really wonderful family time spent, especially with her mom and dad, we were with most of the time, but also with her brother and sister. Her brother and Brandon and his wife, they had a son, Harry, last year in January, and we got to meet him for the first time and spend some time. And he started walking while we were there. Not like we weren't physically in the room when it happened, but we were, but we were there. We saw him that day. So he went kind of from when we arrived doing that, like, that thing that the kids that age do where they're like, I'm going to stand up, I'm going to stand up, and I'm going to sit down. And he went from being at that point when we got there to like taking strings of 5 or 6 steps by the time that we left, which was really, really great to get to be there for that milestone after missing the first year of his life. Lots of fun, like vacation-y sort of things. We took a trip to a place called Hamilton Island, which is just what you would imagine an island off the coast of Australia to be. It's all just resorts and beaches and fun outdoor activities to do. We snorkeled the Great Barrier Reef. If when you saw me today, you were thinking, Alex looks a little bigger than I remembered, that is not false. I tried to eat my weight in seafood while we were there. And we had a nice little trip to wine country. There's a place near where Taryn grew up called the Hunter Valley that is a lot like the Napa Valley here. Got used to driving on the other side of the road and the other side of the car. And all around, just a really, really wonderful trip. It wasn't without its mishaps and setbacks, like any good trip, especially one so long. We had to rebook our first flight over because we got an email the day before that there was going to be, on the 14-hour flight, that there was going to be no in-flight entertainment or outlet electronics on the way over, and so we switched to a later flight, which turned out to be a blessing because we accidentally got our COVID tests 12 hours too early. So we had to go frantically the morning of and get rapid tests and got emailed the results in the car on the way to the airport. And we missed our first flight to Hamilton Island because the Virgin Australia lines were so backed up that it took us an hour to get through the line to the check-in counter. From when we first arrived. I got very sunburned. I don't want to say I forgot how intense the Australian sun is, because I didn't, but I underestimated it yet again, because I sunscreened everything, and then underestimated the re-sunscreen about halfway through the day, and so I got like my shoulders and my neck and my face, the spots that usually burned, but came away from that with a stripe of bright red stomach. And they were in the midst of a like historic rainy season, so it was when we were in the area where Taryn grew up, it was quite rainy, but none of that really put a damper on the trip, because mostly because we did get to do all the fun things that we wanted to do, and mostly it was about the time spent with family, which I guess brings me to the thoughts that I'm left with coming away from it, is this renewed sense of perspective in little ways and big. I noticed, just for example, driving home from the airport, how open and beautiful the Wisconsin countryside is after not seeing it for a month. And I think that over the last couple of years, throughout the pandemic, it's been very easy to get bogged down in the nearsightedness of the day-to-day. Just gotta survive today. Got to stay healthy today. Got to get set up and work from home today. And it's been easy to get caught up in all of that. And I think what this trip has done for me, and what I would encourage you to think about as well, is that renewed sense of the big picture. That the big picture is still out there, especially as we continue to creep towards a normalcy here. So with that, I'm going to play a song by Peter Allen, a native Aussie, and I'm going to dedicate it to my family in Australia. I've been to cities that never close down, from New York to Rio and old London town. But no matter how far or how wide I roam, I still call Australia home. I'm always traveling, I love being free, so I keep leaving the sun and the sea. But my heart lies waiting over the foam. I still call Australia home. All the sons and daughters spinning round the world, away from their family and friends. As the world gets older and colder, it's good to know where your journey ends. Someday we'll all be together once more, when all the ships come back to the shore. I realize something I've always known. I still call Australia, still call Australia, I still call Australia
Good to have you back. Words from poet David White, The Lightest Touch. Good poetry begins with the lightest touch. A whispered, healing arrival. A word in your ear. Settling into things. Then, like a hand in the dark, it arrests the whole body. preparing you for revelation. In the silence that follows a great line, you can feel Lazarus deep inside even the laziest, most deathly afraid part of you. Lift up his hands and walk toward the light. Two cups of flour, 1 cup of milk, 1 egg, a half a cup of shortening, a third a cup of sugar, a pinch of salt, 3 teaspoons of baking powder. That's muffins. Almost. From there goes a little oatmeal left over from yesterday, or wheat flour instead of white, plus oat bran and raisins, or blueberries and nuts, or apples or oranges, or substitute the orange juice for the milk, or add sour cream and reduce the milk, or go with buttermilk and sub out baking soda for some of the baking powder, or flaxseed, or buckwheat, or applesauce, or jam, or those black gooey bananas collecting fruit flies, or honey instead of sugar, yogurt instead of milk, grated cheese, jalapeno pepper, maybe a little chopped ham, or sausage crumbles, or bacon. Cut the sugar and add dried tomatoes, or zucchini when it is at the peak of its irrepressibility, or wild rice and grated carrot, or how about this? Brown sugar, sauerkraut, and a little caraway. Or, as I have been doing for some time now, cut all that in half, whatever it is, because there's just 2 of us now. When our sons were growing up, I went through a muffin phase. I would start with the basic recipe and then add stuff, whatever was in the refrigerator or popped into my head. The joke was that when the boys would ask, "What's in the muffins?" I would come back with something truly outrageous, like used Kleenex or some stuff I scraped out of the dog box. In reality, the stuff in the muffins more closely resembled food, but sometimes it was pretty strange. In cooking up this service, I remembered this recipe, and I thought I might haul it out again. Think of this as improv in the oven. To the muffins, we might add a little jazz. Jazz is like muffins because you start with a recipe. In muffins, it's the ingredients. In jazz, each composition, each tune is a set of chord changes and tempo that holds together even through the solos. Often, an identifiable melody is played at the beginning that sets the pattern for the changes. When each member of the band takes a solo, the soloist breaks from the melody but follows the same chord changes. If you know music theory, you know that there's even a logic to how the chords ought to progress, rules for the change. Underneath each tune is this pattern. It's what makes the tune a tune. Jazz is like muffins because no single ingredient is all you need. In muffins, it's the mix that yields the perfect muffin. Sweet but not too sweet, a light crust on top, and a springiness to the whole thing. There's a delicate balance between just the right amount of cohesion in the wheat flour and the shortening. Too much cohesion and your muffins get heavy. Too little and they fall apart. Just the right amount gives you a good crumb. In jazz, a defining feature is improvisation, the art of what's called a solo. But the word solo is misleading because there's so much else going on. There's form, there's the mastery of your instrument, there's dialogue between the band members, there's spontaneity and an openness to that of each member. A basic form of jazz is call and response. The response might be the most important part. It's hearing what others are doing, finding a way for your voice to be heard, playing off each other. The dialogue of jazz, I think, is what gives richness to the metaphor. This is how it is in our lives. We don't play alone. We react and interact with others all day long. In fact, the other might be necessary for creativity to happen. Paradigm shift occurs only when some externality forces the working model to break down, to misfire in some way. As Anais Nin told us at the call to worship, we go about living our lives day after day, doing the same things until something else, some person, some need, pulls us in a new direction. Jazz is like muffins because practice is the key. In muffins, you learn that yogurt needs to be balanced by a little more sweet, that cooked oatmeal doesn't mix in as well as you think it might unless you use the food processor, that overmixing also contributes to heaviness. In jazz, to learn to improvise, the first thing you need to do is to learn the forms. Musicians spend hours and hours playing scales and arpeggios over and over until they become automatic, mastered in every key. I used to play saxophone in high school, and I know from experience, this is really boring. This is probably why I don't play saxophone now. I never practiced as much as I should have. But practice means that you can play as naturally as you breathe. When the notes become words, when your instrument becomes your voice, then you can grab segments of arpeggios, string together chord changes, speak a new sentence. Jazz is like muffins in that you need to know the rules in order to break them. In muffins, you can sub out yogurt for the milk, applesauce for some of the oil, and add nuts or anything that you have. But if you turn the flour into crust, add tomatoes and cheese, and bake the whole thing, even at the same 400 degrees on a big pan, you don't have muffins anymore. You have pizza. In jazz, the scales and arpeggios, the chord changes, and the logic of the score are the starting point. Moving away from harmony gives the music its shape and its texture, its blue notes. Dissonance tells us not everything is right in the world. that pain comes along with sweetness. But you need to know the harmonies to know when to leave them. As I learned to write, the same rule applied. I started out thinking I would be E.E. Cummings or Ernest Hemingway, and I just wanted to write in short, choppy little sentences. That's how it's done, right? Freeform, creative. Said my teachers. You have to know the rules. You have to spell correctly. You have to know grammar and syntax. You have to develop a thought into a paragraph and your paragraphs into a composition. Long before you can write a 6-word novel, you have to have pulled together a few 100,000 well-chosen words and then start working them down. You have to know the rules in order to break them. Otherwise, the brokenness makes no sense. Jazz is like muffins because in the playing and in the baking, there's a fusion going on. In muffins, it's a chemical reaction fueled by the baking powder. In jazz, it's a fusion of form and creativity. It's an interaction among the players, a way in which individuality and connectivity merge. Nina Simone says, jazz is not just music, it's a way of life, it's a way of being, a way of thinking. Jazz reduces the chaos of living to form, says theologian Sharon Welch. Jazz reduces the chaos of living to form. It so perfectly expresses the contradiction and the essentiality of life that we hear it in our bones. There was a pianist who would sometimes stop in the middle of playing and tell her audience, "Listen, and this will heal you." Listening. This also is necessary for improvisation. Jazz artist Wynton Marsalis says, during a performance, most of the musician's time is spent listening to others. You see the trust they have for each other because they are always making adjustments and improvising based on what someone else does. And in that communion is liberation. Marsalis writes that the originators of jazz were a generation out of enslavement and still deep in a system of segregation and Jim Crow. You would think that they might be all about revenge and rebellion, but instead they were thinking about sharing and communicating. Swing, Marsalis says, is a rhythm, an era in American history, and it is a worldview. In this worldview, there is a belief in the power of a collective ability to absorb the mediocre and poor decisions. When a group of people working together trust that all are concerned for the common good, then they continue to be in sync no matter what happens. That is swing. It's the feeling that our way is more important than my way. This extends to how to treat audiences and consumers, staff, congregations, dysfunctional families. This may seem idealistic, but think about how church congregations recite, nearly together and completely unrehearsed. They proceed, you proceed, by feel. Swing is the single objective. It is the core that makes all want to work together. From Rumi, God picks up the reed flute of the world and blows. Each note is a need coming through each one of us. A passion, a longing pain. Remember the lips where the wind breath originated, and let your note be clear. In this way, we all co-create. We make the whole holy with the holy that is in each of us. No batch of muffins I have ever made has been exactly like another. No jazz standard is ever standard. Creativity is the thing that's in everything. What's in the muffins? Indeed. What's in there? Thank you for coming this morning. I hope you enjoyed our little bit of improv here this morning. In a moment, I will extinguish our chalice. Alex will have one more postlude for us. And wherever you go today, whatever recipe you are following or not, know that you are loved. Seek justice, find peace.
So they say there's no wrong notes in jazz. Does that mean that there's no wrong ingredients in muffins?
That's right.
Got out of town on a boat for the southern islands, sailing a reach for a following sea. She was making for the trades on the outside, in the downhill run to Papa Adele. Off the wind on this heading line, the Marquis seas. We got 80 feet of waterline, nicely making way in a noisy bar in Avalon. I tried to call you, but on a midnight watch I realized why twice you ran away. And I think about how many times I have fallen. Spirits are using me, loud your voice